streets within the future. My dreams are small compared to yours. Why should I worry about tomorrow when I know all I gotta do is trust you, Lord? Every little thing's gonna be alright. Every little thing's gonna be just fine. Whether I can see it now, I know you will work it out for good. Every little thing, everything will be alright. Behind the scenes and in the details, plan the perfect way for me. Why would I dwell upon the road's uncertainties? All I gotta do is look to you. Yeah, all I gotta do is look to you. Every little thing's gonna be alright. And every little thing's gonna be just fine. Whether I can see it now, I know you will work it out for good. Every little thing, everything will be alright. Every little thing, every little thing. Every little thing, every little thing. Every little thing, every little thing. Whether I can see it now, I know you will work it out for good. Every little thing, everything will be alright. Every little thing, every little thing. Every little thing, everything will be alright.
Ethan, it's summertime, and I think one of the things I miss so much in the entire world is absolutely going to the movies. Like, I think there is something so big about just sitting in a dark room and being transported to the other world while eating popcorn. But for right now, all we have is like the couch and the TV shows and Netflix and Disney Plus and things that we can watch on TV. And I love it because it still transports us to somewhere else. Like, what are some of the things that you love most and you're binge watching right now?
So the thing that I find myself most lost in right now is All American. Love it, cannot get enough of it. And then the other thing that I've felt myself like most transported to a different world and just found myself lost in is the movie we're gonna talk about today.
Yeah, there's something about TV and movie characters and those worlds that they create that bring us into something so much bigger than ourselves. And we learn to discover who we are in some of that. Like, I remember a lot of the movies that I loved watching and building relationships with those characters. It almost seemed like I got to figure out some of my life through what they were doing on screen.
Yeah, and that's what we hope to do in this series. We hope to look at the questions that TV shows or movies are asking and answer them with what God says, or to look at the answers that they're giving and see if it lines up with what living our life with Jesus and with God actually means.
Yeah, and I think that's the coolest thing about this series is that we get to look at everything from the surface and discover something so much bigger within it, right?
Yeah, and we're today going to get to look at one of our favorite movies of the summer, Onward.
In times of old, the world was full of wonder and magic. But times change.
I'm a mighty warrior!
Morning, Mom. Hey, birthday boy.
By the laws of yore, I must dub thee a man today. Kneel before me.
That's okay.
I have a gift from your dad. He just said to give you this when you were both over 16.
No way!
In Onward, magic was once a part of life. Like everyone practiced it. It was filled with wonder and spells and all these things. And then the story tells us that as life went on, people started to lose it. Like it just kind of faded away into the background and people got bored with it, or they found technology and all these things. And then life just kind of seemed to lose this sense of wonder that was available to them always.
So in this world of Onward, we follow the story of these two brothers, Ian and Barley. And Ian and Barley's father passed away when they were really young. And so we see their lives look a little different. We see Barley, who has a couple memories of his father's, just trying to cling on to those memories. And we see Ian, who doesn't remember his father, is just trying to live up to the courageous stories that he hears of his father and the man that he was. And so Barley ends up trying to pursue magic and the days of old and seeking that out, but Ian is just trying to figure high school out. He just wants to be the man that his father was and live a life like he did. Ian, on his 16th birthday, gets this gift from his mom. And what we find out is it was actually a gift that his dad left him. It was a staff, a gemstone, to do a magic spell to bring their father back for a day so they could spend just a little bit more time with him. And they rediscover this world of magic that they didn't know existed. Everybody thought had gone away. And they get their eyes open to magic still exists. And suddenly they're full of wonder and curiosity. And just so we're kind of all on the same page of what wonder actually means, I kind of think about like a kid who is seeing something for the first time. Like, have you ever seen a little kid experience something for the first time?
Oh, yes.
I remember when my nephew was little and we went to the beach for the first time. And he was like 3 years old and would never stop talking, right? If he was awake, he was running his mouth. And we get to the ocean, and for this moment, he steps in front of it, and for the first time, I remember since he learned how to speak, he stopped talking. His breath was taken away. And I think that's what wonder is. Wonder is just seeing something incredible, having that incredible thing right in front of you.
Yeah, like I even catch myself like caught up in wonder when I see a sunset and just thinking to myself, having this curiosity of there's so much more going on here. There's so much underneath the surface that makes life meaningful and have purpose in that. And the funny thing is after Ian and Barley get the staff and discover this magic that they have and finally have this chance to see their dad again, something goes wrong. Like the spell doesn't work the way it was supposed to, and so they have to go on this quest to rediscover and figure out like how they can see their dad again. And I think what that reminds me of is there's this whole world that's underneath the surface, and Ian's eyes are opened up to the wonder and the magic that it has always been there. That their dad just showed them this way to what they were going to do. And so we go on this whole adventure with them as they rediscover what was there all along. And I think that is a really good metaphor for what we experience every day with faith.
So magic in this world, I think, is kind of a good metaphor for how we experience what we call faith. Right? Ian and Barley discover magic, and this whole world that was all around them that they didn't know existed starts to happen for them. And they experience these incredible things and get to enjoy these things even more. And Jesus gives us faith so that we can experience this incredible world with God that exists all around us, but before we have faith, we don't get to experience all that there is.
Yeah, it's like opening our eyes to something that's deeper beneath the surface, right? And I think so many times, I know for me for a really long time, and a lot of you might be thinking like, faith just seems so old and outdated and antiquated, and like religion, what does that do for us? Like technology and everything that we have going on in the world is either so much better or all that just seems so old and outdated, and it probably doesn't even do anything with so many people feeling forgotten and lost and alone when the world feels so chaotic.
2,000 years ago, the world was in a kind of similar place to that, right? There wasn't cars and cell phones and Twitter, but the world was still pretty chaotic, and they were trying to make a meaning out of all of it, right? And so instead of the technology that we use to find purpose and to try to fill our time, they were filling their time with rules and regulations. And Jesus came along and came to say that that's not needed, that what you actually want is a life with God, and that that's where purpose and meaning come from. And just as Ian needed barley to guide him back to that life of wonder that was full of magic, we and the people 2,000 years ago needed Jesus to guide us back into that life of wonder with God.
I think Jesus came to this world when there had been like 400 years of silence, where people hadn't heard where God was coming from, and so they started just piling on all these things that they were doing. And I know in my own life, I feel like God can be silent sometimes, and I forget that Jesus is there constantly calling us back into something so much bigger than ourselves. And it feels like so many times that he isn't there, or he has been silenced. So when he came, it was at this crucial point between the Old Testament, the first part of the Bible, and the New Testament, this new part of the Bible.
As we look at the Old Testament all the time before Jesus, we see that God's people experienced pretty incredible things. Like they experienced the wonder of God. We go back to the beginning and there's Adam and Eve, and they're living with God, literally with him, and all of their needs are met and they're safe and secure. But then they sin and a division starts between God and his people. And then we see God bring Moses, and it's an incredible, another wonder moment with God where he takes his people out of slavery and delivers them to freedom, but there's a little less wonder. And then we see God send Joshua, who we just talked about in the last series, and Joshua, by God's strength, leads his people to the promised land, this great place where they were going to be able to experience God even more and the joy that he would give. And they were going to fight these battles that they shouldn't win because of God's strength with them. But we're seeing the wonder wane a little bit more. And we get to the point where God's people are now given what's called prophets. And these are just people that God would pick to speak directly through to his people. And it's a pretty wonder-inducing thing for God to speak through someone to you, and yet God's people would fall away and they would come back, but this is how they lived a with God kind of life, is they were directly hearing from God.
The people of God that you were just saying, the Israelites, they started to lose a lot of that faith. And when you don't hear from God, I know in my own life, I start to like put all these other things in its place just to try and find purpose and meaning. And so you see this group of people start to create all these different systems and regulations just to like try to find purpose. And so when Jesus comes, he came to set the record straight. He came to show us what this life means with meaning and purpose, without all of this feeling of I'm not good enough, or I'm alone, or I have to do these things to make sure that I'm okay. Jesus reminds us that God calls us good and invites us into this life with him.
Before Jesus came to set the record straight, God, like I said, used his prophets to speak to his people. And one of those prophets was this guy named Hosea, and he would tell about when Jesus would come and how Jesus would set the record straight. And he said this: "But afterwards, the people will return and devote themselves to the Lord their God and to David's descendant, their king. And the last days, they will tremble in awe of the Lord and of his goodness. And so Hosea here is just speaking about when Jesus will come, when people will devote themselves to him. And then he's saying what Jesus is going to do is he's going to make sure that everybody turns their eyes and they stand in awe of God's goodness. What they're going to do is they're going to feel wonder again about how good God is. And so Jesus, when he came, that's what he did. He turned us back and he said, hey, there's this whole other world. There's this whole other thing that you can experience. And I want you to guide you back into that with God kind of life that you used to feel, that you used to have.
Yeah, I think for a lot of us, it's really hard to see that right now. You know, we've been stuck inside for the last 2 or 3 months with our same family members, fighting with our siblings, and our pattern of our daily life looks a lot like this. Like, oh, I'm gonna wake up, I'm gonna play some Fortnite, or I'm gonna do some school, I'm gonna eat breakfast, and then I'm gonna go and sit and watch some TV, and then just do it all over and over again. And so I think Jesus, just what you just said, calls us to something bigger. And those moments when I feel like life is just so purposeless and I don't have a lot, he calls us to something bigger in him and to do with others as well. And I think that's the huge thing, is when we follow him, we don't have to feel alone anymore. When we see this wonder or this way that God sees the world, we can look at other people and take care of them instead of feeling alone or feeling like there's nothing that we can do.
One of the things we say around here is that there's 2 deals on the table. And we see some of those 2 deals played out in the movie. Like, we look at Barley, and maybe some of you guys kind of identify with him, right? You don't know what your direction is, you don't know what your purpose is, and so you kind of feel like everybody looks down on you for it. And Jesus is saying that a life with God, that there's this better deal of you have purpose, you have direction, you have meaning. You don't have to figure it out. I will tell you what it is. Or maybe you're a little bit more like Ian, and what you're feeling right now is, I'm trying to figure this all out. I don't know what I'm supposed to do. I don't know where I fit in or where I belong. And what Jesus is saying is, there's a better offer of, I can give you a place to belong, and I can give you a place where you know what you're supposed to do and where you're supposed to go and what you're supposed to be like. Or maybe I feel like we look at kind of the rest of the story, and there's sort of 2 deals on the table that you're feeling. Of one, I feel like my life is just me scrolling through Snapchat and Instagram, just trying to fill my life with more things. I'm watching the next Netflix show that I can, and just to distract myself. And what Jesus is saying is, there's a better option on the table. There's meaning, there's purpose, there's a life that you can have that's full of vibrancy, that's full of excitement and adventure, that's full of wonder, of standing in awe of how good God is. See, Jesus came because he wanted to put that second option on the table for us. He wanted to come to guide us back, to say, hey, there's this other way that we can live. He put flesh on so that he could say, you can come live this life with God that is a better option than the one you've been taking.
When Jesus came, just like what we've been talking about this whole time, the thing that he taught most, more than anything, is that the kingdom of God, this with God kind of life, is here. It's all around us. Sometimes we just completely miss it. Just like the magic in Onward with Ian, it was at his fingertips the entire time, and he just didn't know or didn't see it. And so when we choose to follow Jesus, he opens our eyes to an entirely new world that's been here the whole time. It's filled with peace, it's filled with joy, and a life that is so much better and filled with purpose and meaning. And there's going to be a lot of people, just like that told Ian and Barley, that this thing, this magic, it's archaic, it's old, it doesn't even exist anymore. But we're here to tell you today that the faith is still here, that this with God kind of life, this wonder-filled life where we don't have to feel alone, is right here with us. And Jesus is calling us to do that all the time. And so I think, just like in Onward, where Barley and Ian got to go on this adventure and experience so much more about the self, when we follow Jesus, God invites us on this adventure with Him, where we discover who He is and who we are, and we're able to do so much more than we ever could do without Him.
In the two stories here, there are people that are being guided back to wonder. Ian and Barley are guided back to the wonder of magic. And for us, Jesus has opened our eyes to this world that is around us, and it's always been around us. And He's guiding us back to actually experiencing that, to experiencing the incredible things that we get to when we live a life with God.
That's so good. I'm gonna pray. And the one thing I challenge you guys to do today is pray and ask God to show you wonder and to show you the things in life that have meaning and purpose. And we promise that He will do that. So if you will, just pray with us. God, thank you so much for loving us, for coming to this earth in Jesus so that we may know that you have given us a life that's filled with meaning and purpose and that we don't have to be alone. God, we ask that we would rediscover the wonder in our life, just like Ian and Barley did in the movie, and just like you've showed so many people before us. God, we love you. We ask that you would be with us in all that you do, in all that we do. We love you. It's in your name we pray. Amen.
Have you ever seen the wonder, the glimmer of first sight, as the eyes begin to open and the blindness meets the light? You have so say, I see the world in light, I see the world in wonder, I see the world in light, bursting in living color. I see the world your way, and I'm walking in the light. Have you ever seen the wonder in the air of second life? Having come out of the water, I see the world your way, and I'm not ashamed to say so. I see the Jesus way, and I'm walking in the light.